Thanks everyone for joining us this morning for our online learning webinar. I'm going to get started just by giving a few introductions to our team as we wait for a few more students to join us. Eve, if you don't mind popping over to that slide. So the title for this webinar is How to Be a Successful Online Learner. So thank you for joining us. And I will do just a very quick introduction. So my name is Kayla Van Weert. I'm the Student Success Advisor in Aurelia. Eve, if you don't mind just going to the next slide. So I will be running the presentation today, but I am joined today by my team who will be available to help answer some questions in our chat and Q&A. We do ask if you have questions to put them in the Q&A so that we can address them to everyone in the webinar. And we will likely address those at the end as I won't really have the chance to check those out during the presentation. So today I have with me Hartley. He is our Student Success Advisor on the Thunder Bay campus, as well as Eve. She is also a Student Success Advisor in Thunder Bay. And we're joined as well by Rachel. Rachel is a Student Success Assistant in Aurelia, and she's also a current education student in her final year of the professional program. So Rachel will join me a little later on to give a student perspective about online learning. So a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. There is quite a bit of information. We're trying really hard to make sure that this webinar is offering you some real tangible tips and tricks in order to be successful this semester. So since there's so much information, we will be sending a recording as well as a copy of the presentation. So if you miss anything, don't worry, you'll have the chance to go back and take a look. Essentially though, we will be looking at an introduction to online learning specific to Lakehead University, providing some strategies for being successful in the online environment, and providing a bit of an introduction to academic integrity, as it does look a little bit different online. So to start out, this webinar is available to all students. So this means we may be joined by students who are starting for the first time at Lakehead this winter. So whether or not you're a new student or a returning student, we will be delivering our courses online. So for new students, this might look a little bit different, but regardless of your background with online learning, we're here to share some practical tips in order to become a successful online learner. And just a bit of a review or an introduction, depending on how you're coming in, there are two types of online learning. So we have synchronous, which is what we call real time. Those are Zoom-based courses. And then we have asynchronous. So those are, it's self-paced essentially. So you'll be see those as web-based courses on your timetable, and those are at your own time. So being a successful online learner, while online learning offers flexibility in your learning experience, it also requires self-discipline. It's easy to get distracted and fall behind, especially with asynchronous classes where you need to create your own structure. There isn't a weekly class to remind you of what needs to be done or keep you accountable. So planning ahead is very important when it comes to online learner readiness. What does planning ahead look like? We'll be going over that and what you need to plan in the next few slides. So I wanted to start out by asking you to consider your online learner readiness. It's important to understand the skills, habits, challenges, etc. when it comes to, or when you're coming in order to better prepare yourself for success. So in this webinar, we'll be going over some of these topics to provide you with the tools to make online learning an enjoyable and successful experience. But I did just want to not brush over these questions. So I'm going to ask them out loud and consider these throughout the presentation. So am I good at setting goals and deadlines for myself? Can I keep myself on track and on time? Do I persist when things get difficult? Do I know how to judge competing demands, for example, work, school, and family? Do I know what's expected of me as an online learner? Do I know how to get the most out of my online discussions? Do I expect to allot enough time each week to an asynchronous course? And do I understand how to use the systems required to succeed, specifically D2L? So we will be going over all of these topics and answering the question of whether or not you're ready for online learning and how to be prepared. So we talked already about the difference in delivery between asynchronous and synchronous courses. And now I want to cover the difference in expectations for each of these learning styles. So for asynchronous, you might be taking your first asynchronous class and you might be wondering how much time you'll need when compared to a traditional face-to-face or an online Zoom-based course. Will it be more? Will it be less? What's expected of you? So how is the role of the instructor different in the style of learning, and what is expected of you as a course participant? So these web-based asynchronous courses are quite rigorous, so either as rigorous or even more so than those Zoom-based or classroom-based counterparts, and they do require you to be self-disciplined and organized. Some students have reported that their online courses were actually more challenging, but at the same time provided a better learning opportunity based on the flexibility of those courses. So here are some tips and tricks from the Student Success Center for being successful in these courses. The first is to treat them like a real course and prepare for the required time commitment. Unless your professor instructs otherwise, we do recommend you spend between 8 to 12 hours on your coursework each week for each of your web-based courses. The third, is to get online often. So this means at least a few times per week, if not every day. Online learning allows you to learn anytime, anywhere, but you should plan and check in frequently. Many courses have ongoing discussions and occasional group activities that will require some back and forth conversations throughout the week. Next, we recommend that you connect and interact. So online learning doesn't mean you'll be studying alone, even though you will be studying on your own. In many of your online courses, a lot of your learning will take place through conversations and interactions between you, your peers, and your instructor. This might include weekly discussions and even some small group work. The connections that you form with your peers can also provide you with additional support and encouragement throughout your time at Lakehead. We also recommend that you take control and manage your own learning. So this is a particularly important aspect of online education. You need to be able to be proactive and adaptive and be aware of what the course requires of you and plan how and when you're going to make up those requirements. So keep an eye on your progress, make changes if you notice or feel like things aren't going well. This could include speaking up and seeking help from your instructor when you need it. And also be willing to try new things. So if this is your first online or asynchronous class, you might find your tried and true study methods aren't applying to this new format. Seek out and try new ways to go about learning at a distance. We do have a great resource on the Student Success Center webpage called Being an Effective Online Learner, and we do offer some tips here on how to change up your study habits. Finally, we'd like to just say that this is a student-centered experience. So basically what that means is that the online courses that you're taking will likely take a student-centered approach. Your instructor will be there to guide and facilitate you to construct your own knowledge rather than being the primary information giver. So this is likely different than previous learning experiences. And for a lot of students, it can mean emphasis on learners supporting each other through discussion, peer assessment, group projects, and online study groups. But you will have guidance and support and feedback from your professors and GAs. You will also notice a difference in your synchronous or web-based style learning than what you might be used to with face-to-face. So there are students who have already experienced this, but for those starting this term, this could be completely different and completely new for you. We recommend that you treat a web-based course similar to how you would treat an in-person course as best as you can. So here are some of our tips on how to do that. The first is to show up with the intention of learning by preparing your workspace for success. This includes getting ready for your day. I know it's tempting to spend the day in your pajamas. We've all been there, but getting up, getting dressed, and getting mentally in the right headspace is really important to be successful in a learning environment that does pose many distractions. The next is to log into your Zoom meeting a few minutes early. This allows your instructor to start on time and shows respect to your classmates. The third is to, when possible, turn on your camera. We like to see this as the in-person equivalent of sitting near the front of the class. We know it's not always possible to have the camera on, depending on what your background looks like. But when you do have your camera on, you are less likely to get distracted by your cell phone or other people in the room. So it will help you feel more connected with your instructor and your peers because you'll have the chance to see everyone face to face. Finally, I do recommend that you ask questions. You ask them often, you ask them live. When you have these in-person or real-time conversations with professors, you do have the chance to ask questions that other students are probably wondering as well. Waiting until after the class to email questions to your instructor will likely delay the response time and could affect your success. The next thing we'd like to go over is considering your environment. So regardless of which style of course you're taking or whether it's a combination of both, setting up your learning environment correctly is important for your success. So it's important to ask, is your work area designed to ensure that you're successful? Are there distractions like technology or family and friends? Are your course materials organized in front of you before you start either your real-time learning or an assignment that you'd like to work on your own time. We do have a few tips. So if you can reserve a space for schoolwork, you should do it. If that's your bedroom and that's the only space that you can go to and shut the door and be not distracted by roommates or family, that is probably the best place for you to study. Try and keep it separate from the bed. So if you can set up a table, that's the best option. We recommend that you focus on one subject at a time. So whether that's one subject on your desk or one subject on your screen, try not to multitask too much between courses. And then the third is eliminate distractions. So we do recommend downloading what you need and then turning the internet off. This will help you from not going online until your schedule breaks. So I did just quickly want to touch on managing time. We do have a complete webinar on time management. It was run yesterday, but the recording can be found on our website. So I do highly recommend you check that out. But I did just want to say that it is tricky, specifically in the online environment, to manage your time. There never really seems to be enough, and it seems that things can become unmanageable pretty quickly. So I do recommend that you check out our website, but I will just cover some top tips on finding balance. The first is to understand your course. So as soon as possible, find out what's required from you. Find out what your goals, activities, assignments are, and how often you need to get online. What days and how often. So this will be found on your course syllabus or course outline. And if you do have questions, make sure you reach out to your professor right away. Don't wait. Make sure you understand those immediately. The second is to schedule your time. So write down all your course deadlines on a calendar, create a schedule to plan your study time and your other commitments around those things, and treat the time that you've put for studying as seriously as you would a job, as well as your sleep time. It's important to schedule that as well. We recommend breaking down big tasks into smaller goals. So for each of your study or work sessions, decide what you want to accomplish in the time that you have, and try to set a lot of specific goals for smaller blocks of time. For example, 20 minutes up to 2 hours, rather than a few goals for larger blocks of time. For example, tomorrow, I will do that assignment. It helps you estimate your time a bit more accurately and keep you motivated. We also recommend that you prioritize, since not everything is equally important, and to use the techniques demonstrated in our time management webinar to focus on things that deserve your time and attention. The fifth is to be realistic. Make sure you take breaks. Everyone needs some downtime for recreation and leisure activities, and you'll find it easier to stick to a study schedule if it includes time to relax. And finally, continue to assess and adjust. So if the schedule that you've created isn't working for you, be flexible with yourself and change it to meet your needs. Changes will happen throughout the semester. So My Course Link, everyone here should be familiar with My Course Link, also called D2L at this point. This is where all of your classes will live now that classes are online. So materials, course outlines, tests, assignments, discussion posts, this will all take place on D2L. So make sure that you get familiar and ask questions early if you don't understand something or if a link is broken. Some professors will post all of the course material for the semester at the start of term, while others might release it on a week-to-week basis. Learning and being aware of what your instructor is doing is very important for success, so you can plan ahead. Make sure that you're reading the course outline for every course, and doing that I would recommend at latest this week. Visit every course multiple times per week to make sure you're not missing anything. Explore all of the tabs and content early to see how you can set up your schedule based on the content. There is a lot of reading, especially for those asynchronous courses, so be ready for it and don't get behind. And then make sure you participate in the discussion forums. I will be going over a bit more about how to do this later on, but remember that D2L does have a built-in how to learn section with videos, and you might want to check those out this week. So quizzes and tests. This will look different than for in-person classes, as you probably have experienced already. When it comes to quizzes on D2L or any online site like this, it's really important to understand the expectations, as they will vary from class to class. So understanding if there's a time limit for the test that you're taking, if there's a range of dates where you can take that test within, if you're able to return to previously answered questions after passing those questions on the test in the allotted time, knowing whether or not it's open or closed book. So it's really important to understand these expectations before you start the test, especially if there's a time limit. And as promised, online discussion forums, I will go over this a little bit as well. I've embedded a YouTube video. I'm not going to show it because it's a little bit laggy when shown in this environment. So I do recommend when we send you these slides that you watch this on your own time. It does give a very good introduction to how to approach discussion forums, and I'll go over some of those suggestions right now. So most of your online courses are likely going to include an online discussion or forum component, and often there is a requirement to do this for some percentage of your course grade. So it sometimes feels easy to just skip that part. It's only 10%, but we do recommend not only for the grade, but also for understanding the course material that you're participating in discussion forums. As you get to know your classmates, you'll find discussions are a great place to ask questions, give your opinion, tell jokes, share experiences, and chat about things that excite or trouble you, as well as exchange ideas and information. So your discussions will contribute to the development of your assignments and provide you and other participants the opportunity to think about course content from a variety of perspectives. It is, however, important to understand what your professor's expectations are, as classes may have their unique set of guidelines for how to approach the forum. Some professors may just want you to post a separate topic for each student, while others might want you to go more in depth by responding to other students. We will note that discussions are not always easy. So I wanted to go over some of the common challenges that you might experience with online discussions. So these include not knowing what to post, feeling overwhelmed by the amount of information and the number of posts, and wondering if you need to read everything. And then also feeling confused when no one else is participating. So there aren't any discussions up, it's Friday, where are your classmates and why aren't they contributing? So we have some tips on how to approach those challenges. So the first is to not just post, but discuss. So forums are about exchanging and building on each other's ideas. So you should post, your post should move the discussion forward. Add to what others have posted, ask new questions, share personal experiences. Instead of posting, I agree, also explain why you agree. The second is to not underestimate listening. Online discussion isn't just about posting what you think. It's also about listening to what your classmates are saying. Take the time to get to know what others in the class are sharing. The third is to think quality, not quantity. So discussion forums can generate a lot of posts sometimes, which becomes very overwhelming to read. It is important to keep an eye on the other things that your peers are posting and try to assimilate everything. So be strategic, identify posts or start posts that are critical to your learning and understanding, and focus the majority of your attention on the quality and in-depth conversation about those specific posts. The fourth is to be prepared. So do any readings that you need ahead of time and try whenever possible to relate the material to your experiences to make the course work for you. The next one is to enjoy the chance to learn from your peers. Each of you brings a unique perspective to the course. Everyone has a very different background, and discussions are that really great opportunity to compare your experiences and to share kind of what you're enjoying with the work, what you're struggling through the work based on your past perspective. It's also important to be clear and concise. So focusing on getting your meaning across rather than writing a novel is important. Keep in mind, you can also send attachments, attach documents, images, embed URLs so that students can kind of dig deeper into what you're talking about. The next is if you're not sure what to say, we always recommend going back to your course material and your readings and ask yourself if there's a piece of information that you need so you can better respond to the discussion questions. Maybe there's additional resources that can help you fill the gaps in your knowledge. And finally, stay on topic. So keep those conversations that are unrelated to the course content outside of that discussion forum. There might be a place on D2L where you can have those kind of side conversations, and we recommend that you look for those. So with a new style of learning in a new online environment, it is important to continue to consider academic integrity and plagiarism and what that looks like in this environment. So for example, when you're taking a quiz in the privacy of your own home, we recognize that it might feel a little different than what you're used to. And there has been a bit of a trend with increased cheating in these environments. So feels weird, you're at home, you're in your own space, you're on your personal computer, and it doesn't necessarily trip that moral compass in the same way. So what we recommend is that you imagine you're sitting in a classroom or you're sitting in the hangar and you're writing your exam and that you exhibit similar behavior. So some examples of this is to think that picking up the phone and calling a friend or having someone sit next to you while you're writing a test is the equivalent to leaning over and asking someone for the answer during an exam. As well, Googling an answer is similar to using a cheat sheet or having something written on your arm. So the result of these in an in-person environment is that you won't be allowed to finish the exam and you'll receive a 0. And the result in an online environment will be exactly the same. So if the test is closed book, try to simulate that exam room. Don't have your phone on you, don't have your textbook, don't have other resources. It's just too tempting. The good news is, professors are adapting to the challenges of testing in an online environment. So in most cases, instructors are opting to have open book tests. So they're allowing you to have your notes and they're considering this when writing the questions. And they're also offering more time to complete them. So this reduces your stress levels and gives you some time to slow down, consider your answers, and you're less likely to jump on Google to check that out. They've also changed the way they're assessing your understanding. So for example, a lot of professors are giving 48-hour take-home exams. So you have 48 hours to complete it and submit your assignment. The third point here is detecting cheating. So just because you're at home, it doesn't mean that professors can't detect that you're cheating. In fact, with everything being written online and everything kind of living online, it's actually a lot easier to detect if work has been copied and pasted or if there's been collaboration between classmates. In this as well, I'd like to give a warning against using sites like Course Hero or Chegg, if you're familiar with these. There are 3 things that I'd like you to consider with these kinds of sites. So the first is, what is the reason that you're taking your course? If you're taking a class but paying for answers, then you're defeating the purpose of learning and you're cheating your post-secondary experience. So that's the first consideration. The second consideration is just because you're paying for work from someone else, it doesn't mean that the work is actually correct. Some of these online tutors are not trained in the field. So it's a very high risk situation for you. And then the third is that there is a trend with these online paid for answer websites where the tutor is selling an assignment or test answers and then blackmailing students with threats of reporting them to the dean or instructors. So again, another high risk situation where you risk either your university career or your bank account. So we just really highly recommend against going to these sites, and just make sure that you're planning your time and learning your coursework early, and you won't have the need for something like that. And then I'll just give a quick plug here. We do have a course, a self-register course on D2L called Academic Integrity Matters. And I recommend, if you have the time to take this, some professors will request that you take this as part of your course mark. So just to be aware that that exists. Okay, so some other considerations for online learners. It's important, and some of these might be repeated, but these are the considerations that we feel are quite important to remember. So create good independent study habits, like starting work promptly and taking breaks. Establish a peer group that can discuss assignments or tough concepts. You might be able to create this out of either side discussions during your online lectures or on your D2L discussion forums. Alternatively, you can establish this through something like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, and you can also schedule group Zoom calls with a study group. And then finally, be technologically prepared. So become familiar and comfortable with different softwares in order to adapt to the technical requirements and file formats of online learning. If you haven't used Zoom before today, which I am going to assume most students have, spend some time with it to understand how it works. There is a whiteboard feature, and I challenge you to figure out how this works so you can use it in your study groups. It's great for sharing ideas and concepts with more than one person. Oh, I will just note, we do have a Check Your Technology section on our online learning webpage, and it's a really great resource for being technologically prepared. And then most importantly, to highlight, as you work your way through your course, continue to check in daily to see if there are new course postings or updates. And then also download course materials as soon as they're posted. They may not be available later if you have technology issues or internet issues. So downloading that to your computer and having a hard copy is a very good idea. And then also using supports. So Hartley, Eve, and I are here today. If you are struggling with your courses, feel free to book an appointment with an advisor, with one of us, and we can go over some more strategies to better your success in online learning. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to give a little bit of advice based on her experience as an online learner last semester.
All right. Hi, everyone. So, like Kayla mentioned at the beginning, I am a current education student doing all of my schooling completely online, like all of you. So, throughout the past semester, there were 4 key areas that I found really helpful for staying on top of all of my schoolwork and assignments and tests and making sure I didn't miss anything. So, the first thing was always check D2L and your email. Some profs prefer D2L, some prefer email. So I really advise that if you don't already have your Lakehead email connected to your phone or whatever device you have on you most of the time, to do that so that you get those notifications. That way you don't have to worry about checking the email, but you can be sure you're always informed of what's in your email. And then check D2L. A lot of profs prefer to post announcements on their course sites in D2L. So if you check your notifications in D2L regularly, you shouldn't miss anything. The second thing was create a weekly plan for each week. So what I found helpful was on the Friday at the end of every week, I would look at what's upcoming for the next week and write a checklist of the assignments, course readings, or anything that I need to prioritize for that following week. That way, when Monday comes around, you have a focused list of what you need to accomplish and it doesn't look too overwhelming. The third thing is I have a group chat with a number of peers in my classes. This is super helpful if you can connect with some peers in the same classes as you. We use it to help each other with ideas for different assignments or things to study. And it's also super helpful to ensure you don't miss deadlines because you can remind each other constantly. And the last thing I wanted to highlight is make sure you are not afraid to email your profs. So it can be very confusing learning online with expectations and getting confused on what you're supposed to do. This is not uncommon. So if you're feeling this way, just email the specific prof for that course, explain what you're confused about or what the situation is. They're more than willing to help you. And a lot of them will set up Zoom sessions with you if you need that face to face, one on one interaction with them to help you out. So please don't be afraid to do that as well.
Thanks very much, Rachel. It's always really good to have a student perspective. As advisors, we can give advice. A lot of us have already studied online as well, but maybe not at Lakehead and maybe not in the same environment or the full-time courses. So it's always really great to hear from a student who's gone through this already and what your tips are. So thanks, Rachel. And it actually goes along with this next slide, which is support. So we just want to remind you that although your course content isn't conducted in person face-to-face, there are still supports and resources that are available to you. So as Rachel mentioned, reaching out to your professor is a really great way to access that resource and clarify when you have questions. Give professors as much time as you can to respond. So if there's an important assignment and a deadline coming up, if you email the professor the day of or the day before, it's not always realistic to think that you'll get that answer. So make sure that you're thinking ahead and looking ahead. And if you have questions, to ask those early. And then with asking your classmates, as Rachel mentioned, having those groups and having those connections, it is really great for information maybe that you've missed or that you're not understanding. And maybe your whole class needs clarity on that. So knowing that other students have the same questions can be really reassuring. I also wanted to highlight our academic support zone. So we do have tutors that are available free of charge during drop-in sessions, and you can access these tutors for program-based tutoring. So if you're taking a math, whether that's an engineering math or it's a math in the math program, we do have a math tutor, for example, that you can access. If you need support with your writing, we also have writing coaches through the academic support zone, and you can book those appointments on mysuccess.lakeheadu.ca. So those are 30-minute appointments with a writing coach who can help you with anything from starting your paper, referencing your paper, or working through different topics and kind of forming those arguments. As I mentioned before, we do have the Student Success Center advisors. 3 of us are on the call today, and we can definitely help you with skills, academic skills such as time management, reading and note-taking, preparing for exams, and how to be a successful online learner. If you need program assistance, we recommend reaching out to Student Central. One of our Student Central professionals will be able to meet with you and assist you through that. And then finally, our libraries are sometimes an underutilized resource, but if you're struggling in finding information or resources for a paper or an assignment, they can definitely help you with those online search tools. So reaching out to the library is a really good option. I will just note these 2 websites. So lakeheadu.ca/online learning. This is our online learning resource. So some of the things we talked about today and then some additional resources exist there. And then as well, our lakeheadu.ca/student health and wellness website is a great resource for that mental health side of things. So finding ways to take breaks, study breaks, exercise breaks, healthy breaks. That department has a lot of resources available, and I recommend that you check that out.